Good day. We will continue our discussions on programming topics. We will discuss today about local and global variables. What we will do is we will take a brief look at a small part of a poem called Daffodils by William Wordsworth of 19th century. Now, this poem is on beauty of nature. What's important is that when we do dealings in this world and interact with people, it's very important that we bring happiness and beauty into the minds of people. Now, poems such as these help us in creating the beauty and reminding ourselves of our beauty within. So, we'll take a brief look at the small part of this poem. They flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. So this is a poem from Daffodils of William Wordsworth of 19th century. Now we'll go to the topic on global and local variables. Now here, what we will do is global and local variables. Now, in the previous sessions, we had seen examples of various variables. We'll take a quick example here. This is a C program or any program, any programming language, and these are the variables. Now, these variables are mandatory in languages such as C and Java. That means you have to define them compulsorily. Without that, you are going to get a syntax error or compilation error, and compilation will not complete. So you have to define them before their usage so that the compiler knows what kind of variable it's dealing with. We'll take an example. Now here we see an example here, main, and then this is the definition of the variables, two variables I and sum, and this is the usage of the variables. Now here we can see integer I, integer sum, and then we are using these variables here. So these are defined and then used here. So that is the protocol that we are going to follow. Define them and use them. So in all programming languages such as C and Java and all such languages, this way of defining and then using is compulsory. But in older languages and some of recent languages, in some languages, it is this definition before usage is not mandatory, but for most languages it is mandatory. Now we'll go to the local. So first we will discuss what is meant by scope of a variable. Scope of a variable. Now what it means is that scope means this is the extent to which a variable is visible in the program. Now it is like if you stand near the shore of a sea and look into the waters, then there is an extent, there is a maximum extent up to which you can see the ocean. So it's something like that. A variable, to what extent is it visible? Up to the end of the program, up to the end of the particular function in which this variable is defined. Now here, that's what we have here. This is the main, and then we have integer I, and then its usage. Now this is the scope of the variable I. Similarly, in the other, there is another function, find sum. Here, this I is the scope of it is, and this entire function. So this scope is limited to this function main, and this variable I is limited to the function find sum, which is this area. Now, what we need to understand is that whenever we call a particular function, then every time new variable is defined for all such local variables. We will come to it once again in the next part. Now here, as you can see, this I is different from this I. This I is local to this, and this I is local to this. So if you were to call find sum and use I, you are going to use the I here, but this I is different from that. Okay, that's why this is called a local variable. We'll come to that. Now we'll look at the local variable concept. Here, integer I, this is called local variable, and as you can see, it's declared here and used here, and we are calling a function sum1. Here also we have a local variable called I. This is also a local variable. This is local to this function. This I is local to this function. Now this I is different from that. Both are different. So this whenever we use I, this refers to the locally defined variable, that is this variable. Same thing here. The locally defined variable, it refers to that. Now at runtime, when we call this function, see what happens is, let's say, see this is the runtime stack. All right, this is runtime stack. So this is a main. This is a main, and from main we are calling someone. So someone is here. Now the variable I is allocated space here. This variable I of main is here. As you can see, these two are different. Okay, so that's what happens when you call someone. I is used, and when it exits, the whole thing is discarded, and this remains. Okay, so that's the concept of local variable. Now we will look at the concept of global variable. Now here, as we can see, this is declared above main. This variable is declared above main. Okay, we are talking about global variables. So this is a global variable. Just for convenience, we have given G underscore so that we know that this is a global variable whenever we use variables later on. Now here, in this while loop, we are calling a function repeatedly. And this is the function that is getting called repeatedly. Now here, there is a local variable here, I, all right? And then what we can see is we are updating G total trips is equal to G total trips plus 1. Now this is not defined here. As you can see, this is not defined here in this function. So where does it get its value from? It goes, since it is not defined, it goes one level above and sees that this is defined here. So it's going to use that. So it's using a variable that is defined elsewhere globally. So that's why this is called global variable. Now this variable is also visible here. You can use it here and you can use it here. And this variable retains its value. Whenever it is used, say you are calling find trips. So every time find trips is invoked, new variable I is defined on the top of the stack of runtime stack. Whereas this value is once it remains. Whenever you update it, its value remains there. All right. So that's the concept of global variable. Okay, we will look at the summary. We will look at the summary once again. See here, global and local variables. I've given one more example here. Integer I, this is a global variable. And here also I've defined a variable called integer I and used it here. When you use I here, it is using a local variable here. Okay, that's what is happening, because it will see where is it defined. It's defined here, so it's going to use that. So local variable is going to be used here. Let's say we call find trips. So it's got to find trips. Now find trips here, we are using I here. As you can see, I is not defined here. The variable I is not defined here. So from where does it get its value? Where does it get its value? It's going to get it from the global space. So that's here. So I is going to get this value from here. And whatever changes you make here, those changes are going to remain. All right, so remain in I, just like how we have seen in the previous example. Whenever we update here, this value remains. If you were to update it here or use it here, the value will be retained. Whereas when you invoke a function, every time a new value, whenever you invoke a function and it's got a local variable, then it's going to allocate new space for it on the stack. All right, so that's the concept of local and global variables. Now what we'll do is in the next class, we are going to discuss about recursion. And thank you very much, gentlemen, and have a great time.